Hey y'all, I'm Jennifer Ertley. I am a change management consultant and expert. Just want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a complex stakeholder analysis, and that's what you see right here on the screen. It's a screenshot of an analysis that I built. And what I'm going to show you is that I'm going to open this up in Excel because that's where I do all my work for my stakeholder analysis and other change management work. And I'm going to show you how to complete a stakeholder analysis. And let me just give you a little bit of my opinion here up front. A stakeholder analysis is really, in change management work, it is all about not just identifying who the groups are that are going to be either driving the change or impacted by the change or need to be informed about the change. It's really getting to understand each of those groups specifically, what their attributes are, what how they're measured, what might be in their heads when they are either asked to drive change or impacted by change. And we want to make sure that we go beyond just the X's and O's of change management. We want to make sure that we really get into the mindset of each of these groups. And this template that I have here is going to help you do that. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and start to go through it with you. And you'll see in a little bit here how it connects back to the PowerPoint slide. And the reason that I do that is because a lot of the sausage making that happens in this Excel file, then we want to be able to present it to our clients. As change management people, we are often doing presentations. We are often trying to share information with people in an easily consumable way for them. And sometimes Excel is a little complicated. It's a little overly complicated, I guess is what I'd say. And putting it into a PowerPoint template somehow feels a little more like a presentation and a little bit more visually appealing than an Excel spreadsheet, even though it's just the Excel spreadsheet in that PowerPoint slide. But I'll get to that in a minute here. So what I always like to do is put the name of the project up here at the top. So here we've got complex stakeholder analysis. Let's just say the date of the analysis is January 1st, 2025. We know that's already passed, but we'd put an actual date there and then put the name of the project, right? Like when you go to talk to people and share information with people, they need to be reminded of what you're talking about, because especially for change management people, we might be working on multiple projects and our clients might be working on multiple projects. So let's remind them of what we're doing here, right? We're talking about the cabling automation project. And here at a high level, I've got what is the cabling automation project all about. So I put that we're introducing automated cabling. There's going to be a new app. There's going to be a new process. There are going to be new KPIs, etc. You can put more information here, as much or as little, but this I like to just try to keep it sort of high level. And then over to the right, I always put who is our, these are not actual names, by the way. I like to put who our project sponsor is, who our project leader is, whatever vernacular that you use for your project. Again, I like to remind people. So if I'm talking to Kelly Morehouse and I'm sharing this with her, I want to make sure that she is reminded that she's the project sponsor, and with sponsorship comes responsibility, right? So anyway, these are just the very simple basics at the top of the sheet that I like to use. Hopefully you'll find it helpful. Okay, so let's get into it in terms of the stakeholders themselves. Okay, so here's the group or the team. Some people might put function at the top. By the way, all these headers are editable, and I sell this template on my Etsy shop as well as my website specifically, and also on Gumroad. So I will provide links to that. But up here, the group of the team or the function or whatever, let's just say it's sales, right? And what's the specific role? Because sales is the function, but there may be specific roles within function. In this case, we're talking about inside sales reps, ISRs. Great. So the reason that you drill down to that role is because if there are multiple functions within sales and if there are multiple roles within sales, you may have one role that is impacted and another role that is not. So let's get down to the details. And that's what this stakeholder analysis is all about, getting into those details. Let's not gloss over anything, because when we gloss over things, that's when people get left behind. Okay, great. So now we've got our inside sales reps, and what are their attributes? Like, what do they care about? So they're definitely customer facing, even though they're an inside sales rep. They're concerned with customer satisfaction. They are probably measured by how many people they talk to in a day, for how long they talk to customers on the phone, or the interactions that they have, and that's probably all tracked through CRM. And then also, if they're taking an order, when are they promising that we can deliver? They can deliver that order, and when are they actually delivering? So there is a trail from inside sales all the way through production, sometimes all the way through delivery, right? And so we want to make sure that we are taking into account what's important to them. What does their day look like? Are they logging on in the morning, and do they have a queue of calls that they need to respond to right away? Like, what are some of those things about those people that may make this easier for them to adopt the new cabling technology, or may make it harder for them to adopt? Okay, and then we look at the level of impact for this specific group, the inside sales rep. Are they I've got some drop downs here. Is their level of impact low, moderate, or high? Pretty simple. You can define whatever you want in terms of low, moderate, or high. I use logic with my level of impact. So if they are moderately or highly impacted, they definitely get some training. If they're impacted at a low level, generally we just do communications. That's how I like to do it. That's my logic, but we'll get to that later. All right, so then what are those high level impacts, right? So the cabling automation is something that happens in production. It happens way down the line, but we want them to communicate that to their customers. Why? Because it helps a customer understand, like, what happens with their order down the line. Hey, we're going to be introducing some automation, which makes the company look a bit more tech savvy. Everybody's talking about automation, robotic process automation, AI, et cetera. We want to make sure that we are providing information to those inside sales reps that's going to help them in their customer interactions. So what this means for the customer is that automation is probably going to take off about 2 days in the overall cycle of when they're going to get their order. So that's great news for the customer, right? So we want those inside sales reps to be talking this up to customers. That's why we say they're moderately impacted, because when they come in on a Monday morning and they start talking to customers, and they know that the normal part of their interaction is to let the customer know when they're going to get their order, now they get to tell them that they're going to get it 2 days earlier, right? So anyway, we want them to be able to communicate with the customer, so we'll be providing them information on how to do that. They may recalculate quoted shipping costs, because if it took 5 days to get there before, and cabling has provided us with an extra 2 days in the process, maybe we are able to find some efficiencies in shipping costs. And again, we want them to help sell that new capability. Okay, so then we list the individuals' names. Now, if you work in a large organization, you're going to have a lot of people in that inside sales role potentially, and you may not want to have one cell per person. So what I sometimes will do is put the people that have high influence, or the people that are in director, manager, supervisory roles, because there are fewer of them. So I'll list them out specifically. And then if there are a number of associates, again, not that they're not as important, obviously they're super important, but I'll list them more as a group, because they all have the same attributes, where supervisors do something a little different than managers, who do a little something different than directors, et cetera. So list out your individuals. I like to get the actual names. That's important, that I start, as a change management person, that I start to really internalize who these people are. And actually, when it comes time to do some stakeholder interviews and things like that, that I've got their names down. I'm not going to remember everybody, but I like to at least document everybody. And then, what degree of influence do they have in the company? We're kind of moving into the individuals and influence category here. What how much influence do they have, and do we need to pay special attention to them? Because if I'm looking at Bonnie here and she's a director, you would assume that a director would have excuse me, have influence in the company. Great. But let's make sure that we mark that, because we're going to ask Bonnie to do some things for us, right? We're going to ask her to potentially communicate, and we're going to ask her to join training. And we're going to ask her to do some other things and use her influence to make sure that this particular group of inside sales reps within sales is doing what we ask them to do, right? And is being that champion of the project. So then we put the level of engagement. Well, where is that person right now? And that's why when we go up here and we've got the date of the analysis, we're going to update that date a lot because this stakeholder analysis is not a one and done. So we're going to come back to it often. And if Bonnie is engaged right now, that's great. Look, she's in a leading role, or in terms of her level of engagement, she is leading. We have other people who may be resistant or neutral or might not be aware of the change. And at that moment in time, when we're doing the stakeholder analysis, we want to make sure that we mark where they are at that moment, because that's going to help us when we determine our next actions. If somebody is unaware, we better make them aware, right? We better get to that point and soon, depending on the deadline of the project or the go live. And then we get over here into communications. Some stakeholder analyses would end right at the level of engagement. I've added some additional content here that to me makes it a little bit more valuable in terms of what our next steps are. So like I said, if somebody is unaware, then we can start to say, okay, great, when do we need to start communicating with that person? So we'll start to kind of list out some of the communication, the frequency with that particular person or group. Then we'll start looking at the methods. Hey, are there already standing advisory meetings or town halls or managers meetings or things like that that we can leverage and start talking to people? When do we want to start talking to people? What's the priority? So Bonnie is a high priority. If we keep going with her for a minute, she has a high degree of influence. She is leading the project. We want to get with her on a monthly basis because she's going to be of influence, and we want to make sure that every month we have some really good content to share with her that she can then cascade to others. We're going to get to her through advisory team meetings and town halls. We're going to start our communication right away, and she's a high priority, right? So Bonnie, I've got some additional notes here. Bonnie's a hands-on leader. We must keep her informed and provide clear documentation for sharing. So this stakeholder analysis is, again, if we go back to the beginning here, it starts at a high level. What's the group? Okay, great. Now we go down to the role, then we go down to the individual. And when we get to the individual, that's where a lot of this sort of sausage making happens, because we want to make sure that we really get into the hearts and minds of the individuals that are listed here. And I've got some additional content here just to show some examples of what another function might look like, and then the roles, et cetera. Because cablers, as like this is a cabling automation project, they are highly impacted in this particular project. And so we would go through the additional work of understanding the specific impacts and who those people are. Okay, here's a note. Right down here, I've got first and second shift team members. I have not listed them out. There are hundreds in this particular organization in this example. I have plenty of cells to work with, but that would make this a very unwieldy spreadsheet. So what I would potentially do is I would create another sheet down here at the bottom with the plus sign, and I would list all of those team members there. So I've got them still in the same place, but when I need to present this particular table, it's not, hundreds and hundreds of rows. So that's how I do that. But I like to keep all of my stakeholders in the same set of sheets within the same workbook in Excel. I don't want to have to be switching between different worksheets and, what's this one called and what's that one called, et cetera. So I want to make sure that I've got everything in the same spot. Okay, well, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. And like I said, I've got some links if you want to learn more about these particular tools for change management. And have an awesome day. Thank you so much.